Hi guys, interesting weekend for the 20th of November. The auction results, mixed results this week. We actually had some properties passed in and a couple of the auctions, there were literally only 2 or 3 people there. It may be an indication though that as we're approaching Christmas and with prices going a little bit crazy, people are maybe just starting to become a little bit hesitant. Not really sure. The next couple of weeks will reveal that. But look, enjoy the results. Saw some really interesting things in some of the properties. I've done a separate video on those. I'm also doing a separate video on a couple of particular properties that some reasons why I think they either got a low price or why I think they were passed in. So enjoy. Hope you have a good week. Bye. Okay guys, the results for the 20th of November, that's last Saturday, 2021, some really mixed results. Let's have a look through them quickly. So the first one was Honeysuckle Way in CALAMVALE. Actually, I really like this house, executive style home. So 7 bedroom, 3 bath, 4 car, 1,385 square meters with a pool, but very much an executive style, a little bit dated inside, but wouldn't have to spend a lot of money to really bring it up to a nice standard. Had a pool, a lot of lifestyle about it. It had multiple living areas that were segregated from each other. It was really good. So, good turn up at the auction, but the reserve was not met, which means that the property was passed in. The highest bidder, $1,460,000. So they passed it in at that, and then they went into private negotiations. At this stage, it's not known if they've managed to secure agreement on the price. Couple of observations from this particular property. So 1,385 square meters in CALAMVALE, very good suburb. It's on Honeysuckle Way, which is the main thoroughfare into the estate and that area. So there is going to be a lot of traffic when you're trying to exit your property and when you're trying to enter your property. But apart from that, very nice home. A little bit dated, like I was saying. So curved archways, which is a bit of a dated look. If they actually cut the archways out and squared them off, that's a much more modern look that people are more appealed to these days. Something else, passed in at nearly $1.5 million, and here are the steps going into the house, which is just a pile of bricks that are stacked on each other loosely, dangerous. Every couple of people are needing to shuffle them back together. Look, I just think it missed the mark effectively for that price point. Buyers don't expect to have to spend more money just getting the basics sorted out, and having a step up into the house, that's a pretty fundamental requirement. One thing I love about this house, it's got its own bar. This whole room was just dedicated to the bar. You could fit a pool table in there. There were sofas. Really, really nice space. That's where I'd be spending my time if I bought this place. So next place, Leah Ave Salisbury. 6 bedroom, 4 bath, 4 car, 856 square meters, $1,100 a week in rent, and it's a dual occupancy. So what that means is one title, a couple of residences and a couple of dwellings on it. You can see those 2 roof lines. So the 2 roof lines closest to the photo, they both belong to this property as well. So the first roof line, just near those wheelie bins, that's actually the car accommodation for the house next door. And the house next door, that's another self-contained rentable space as well, which is why they're able to get the $1,100 a week in rental income. Additionally, you see that room down the bottom, just behind that garden planter box, that's actually a self-contained granny flat. So there's 3 separate income sources on this property. One for the granny flat, one for the main residence, and then one for the secondary house that's down the backyard. But again, the reserve was not met and the property was passed in. The final bidder, $1.175, and that wasn't high enough to secure this property with $1,100 a week income, so they went into private negotiations. It's unknown if an agreement was reached. Couple of observations. You'll notice this property already has fire alarm compliance. So just a reminder, 1st of January 2022, so in about 6 weeks, every rental property needs to comply with the new fire alarm legislation, meaning every bedroom and hallway needs to be an interconnected fire alarm. So if one goes off, they all go off, and that needs to be done before the 1st of January. So if you're a landlord, make sure you got that sorted out. If you're buying a property, we need to make sure that it's going to be compliant. And if it's not compliant, you need to factor that into your purchase cost because you are going to incur that cost to make the property compliant. Now, some people may just breeze over this, but this is a real sign that you do need to be aware of. There is a potential that the property needs to be completely rewired. Looking at some of the older wiring in this house, it does look like it's due. Now, considering that the fire alarms have just been done, we can only assume that this Sparky has sorted that out. But as a general rule, whenever we're looking at properties on behalf of clients or on behalf of ourselves, we're always aware in the older homes of the state and the age of the wiring because it can cost you a significant sum to get your wiring upgrade. The last one we did was about $16,000. Now this is interesting. You'd never get away with this if these were separate titles, but because it's dual occupancy, you can. This is the roof line on the carport for the dwelling or the residence that is behind the main residence at the front of the block. So you can see that the gutter line and the roof itself actually extends over the boundary of that fence. That's not allowed under normally titled properties, but because it's dual occupancy, it's basically you're not encroaching on the neighbour's property because you own that property as well. It's your own property. Being dual occupancy, you've just got dual occupants, dual as in two, but it's just on the one title. They're actually so close, that's me touching the gutter, just standing up on that balcony up the top there. Another thing about this house, you will see those push-out casement windows. One of the issues you have is insects and vermin, flies, all that coming in. I just took this photo to give you an example. This is the solution for it. They are sliding fly screens. They're a track and rail system that are on the inside of the windows so that you can keep those windows open, still receive nice airflow and breeze through the property, but you also have protection against insects, mozzies, flies, anything that gives you grief. Just another note, it's not a big thing, but the spa was on the very front deck. Some people don't want to be getting in and out of their spa in their togs on the main street where everyone can see it. Now, if you had a choice, and they didn't have a choice in this situation, but if you had a choice, you would always put your spa in a more private part of the residence because it's a significant expense and you want to get the best bang for your buck, which is usability. Next property, Beaudesert Rd Moorooka. Now, did no research on this property. It was literally a drive-by. It was between appointments. And this one looked like it was going to be an absolute cracker from a developer perspective. 3-bed, 1 bath, 1 car, 1,348 square metres, 6 kilometres from the city. So from a developer perspective, just on face value, this looks like it was ticking all the boxes. However, very interesting result, and just doing a very, very small amount of evaluation on this property post-sale, I could see why it got the result that it did. We're expecting there to be dozens of developers lined up because that amount of land that close to the city on Beaudesert Road, you would expect that to go for a premium price. So there were probably 20 people that were at the auction, so it certainly wasn't a non-event, but with the initial stats, it looked like it should have been packed to the rafters. However, there were a few things that impacted that. It sold for $880,000 after a lot of bidding, and it was going up in $500 increments, but they got there in the end, so they did achieve a sale. Okay, so there's some really interesting observations on this particular property as to why the developers didn't turn up in droves and why the price was so suppressed on what initially you would think was going to be a much better result. Now, if you have a look at the frontage is the width of the property that faces the street. It's only 18.5 metres, and normally you need 20 metres as a minimum to get favourable treatment with council. Now, yes, under special circumstances, you can get favourable treatment with less than 20 metres, but because this was only 18.5 metres, and with the other contributing factors, we think this was going to have a massive impact on the ability to subdivide this block, as access would be a genuine and legitimate issue. One alternative might be to purchase that house in the top right-hand corner as well, because that is on the side street, and then that way you'd be able to get access to the rear of this block through that side street access. Now, the topography of the block, the topography just means the slant of the land. It's high at the front and goes to the back. At the back of the block is a public park. Now, we had an issue with the Ipswich City Council where the council wanted us to upgrade all of the trunk infrastructure in the area because we're going onto that public land, which then made the whole feasibility uneconomical or unviable. So these guys need to be careful. They may get stuck with a property that is just 1 or 2 houses on a big block of land. If they had intentions of getting a lot of units on here, they may be in for a bit of a shock. However, time will tell. The other thing that I think may have had a contributing factor is you can see where that house is located by that yellow teardrop, and you'll see there's a side street and the road in front. So the road in front is Beaudesert Road. The road that it connects up to is Ipswich Road, so the main road. Now, because it's so close to such a high traffic area, that would trigger a traffic impact study by a traffic engineer. And he would have to approve and authorise having increased traffic in such a already heavily congested traffic area. And I think you'll find they won't support that. We had an issue on Brisbane Road out at Ipswich. Again, same story. It would have been a fantastic block, but the traffic impact study, we couldn't satisfy council that the impact would not cause significant disruption to the normal flow of traffic in such a high traffic area. So our application at the time was rejected, and I think that's what would happen with this particular property as well. Okay, Troughton Road, Coopers Plains. Now, good turn up at this particular auction. 10-bedroom home, 2 bath, 2 car, 820 square metres. Positives and negatives on this location. So very close to the QET Hospital, Gardens City, lot going on in the area, close to employment hubs, public transport. But the negative is it's on a very, very busy street where sometimes we were struggling to hear the auctioneer. There was so much road noise coming from the traffic. But corner block, which is very positive from a development perspective, 822 square metres, really good. And 10 bedrooms, very good for potentially student accom, although you would have a lot higher level of compliance required than what they're currently got going in the current situation. Good turn up at the auction. Interestingly, did not meet the reserve. It was passed in. The final bid was $1.1 million and they couldn't get there. So they went into private negotiations after sale. Again, we're not aware of if a result was achieved. Okay, so one of the other observations here is the versatility of this block. So because it's 820 square metres, you had the flexibility to either do 2 square 411 square metre blocks where you could get both access points to the block, or what they call crossovers on your footpath. You could get those from the side street, and that would certainly be more supported by council, as opposed to the example on the right, which are long and skinny blocks. You'd probably still get one access off the side street for the one closest to the side street, but because you would need access on and off from Troughton Road, which is the busy road going through this whole area, that would not be as freely supported by council as what the one on the left would be. So just something to keep in mind with your own development stuff. Like we said, very good area, 17 minutes to the CBD, near the QE2 hospital, heap of bus routes, near Nathan campus for Griffith Uni, Robertson Village, Robertson School, Cusack, Garden City, Sunnybank Plaza, Market Square, really good location, really like this part of the world. Okay, Harden Street, Acacia Ridge, this one was a bit of a surprise. So Acacia Ridge is traditionally lacked a little bit, has some flood area, got to be a little bit careful. Normally a bit of a lower demographic as far as pricing, but it is surrounded by some good suburbs that have got good pricing. So on this particular property, 3 bed, 1 bath, no car accommodation, 733 square metres on a corner block. Look, realistically, the property was a knockdown and it would have had some asbestos in there for sure, which is just going to add a little bit to your demolition cost. So when we turned up, heap of cars in the street for people registered to bid, heap of people at the actual auction. Did sell for $775,000, so a great result for the seller. So a few observations. Very, very small house, need a lot of work, so it really was a demolition. So they're really paying for the land, and then add to the cost of that your stamp duty to purchase, and add to the cost of that the cost to demolish the house. So it does make for an expensive bit of land in Acacia Ridge. And this is just an example of what the kitchen was like. You would not go and spend money on renovating it. You'll never generate enough rent from this property to give you a decent return against the purchase price. So it really is a knock down and go again. Okay, Daintree Drive in Parkinson. Parkinson's a fantastic little suburb, really performed well over the last few years. 4 bed, 2 bath, 2 car, 620 square metres, really nice modern home internally. A good amount of people turned up to the auction. Like, this is only one little section. There were people grouped like this all the way around the auctioneer, and it sold under the hammer for $935,000. So a great result for the sellers, which then moved us on to Pinetree Place at CALAMVALE. Again, CALAMVALE's a great suburb. 4 bed, 2 bath, 2 car, 709 square metres and a pool. Now, when we turned up, the streets were packed, the side streets were packed. There were a heap of people there. It was quite a spirited auction. Sold under the hammer, $960,000. The final one for the day was Mead Place at CALAMVALE. So it was a 4 bed, 2 bath, 2 car, 528 square metres. And although it looks like a separate house, this one's actually on a body corporate on the estate. So that's just an additional expense you would incur. These are like glamour townhouses, effectively. They look really nice inside, very modern appointment. Great job by the auctioneer. He knocked down a couple during that day. He predominantly does a lot of the place auctions, and he got a good result there at $675 for the townhouse. So consistent with what we were expecting in that area. So there you have it, 20th of November 2021 auction results for the ones that we got to see. We are starting to feel there's a bit of a shift in the market, a little bit of cooling. But we can't take that just on 1 week, because the week before that it just was absolutely ballistic. So we'll see what happens this next week and the weekend after that running up to Christmas, and that will give us a good idea of what's happening. Have a good week, everyone. Look forward to talking to you soon.